Welcome to a ride on the outside. MMA is full of people on the inside, but what about the ones that watch from beyond? Welcome to the MMA Outsiders with Tom Albano and Zain Bando on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
Well, my goodness, we have reached 100 editions of the MMA Outsiders. 100 episodes where you have seen our ugly mugs just ripping and roaring about everything MMA, breaking down fights, previewing UFC pay-per-views, recapping UFC pay-per-views, talking about the biggest news, talking about all the Conor McGregor news whenever he opens his big fat mouth, and he did so again this weekend. But yeah, we've reached 100 episodes, Zan. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I can't believe it either, and I think it's hilarious how we started with talking about UFC 277 on episode, I think it would have probably been 0, and now going into episode 100, we're talking about UFC 307, which is weird. It's weird to see the timeline there. They've covered, it is now 30 UFC pay-per-views. If you didn't recap, if you didn't then eventually recap 30 UFC pay-per-views, it's pretty unbelievable. I didn't even know if we'd make it to 10, which was 15, but 100 is mind-boggling. We started this thing in July 2022, and now we're hitting in October of 2024. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I think I was at the tail end of July, start of August of 2022. So here we are, a little less than 2.5 years later, and we're just continuing to go. As always, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network on youtube.com/ETB Network. Help us continue our subscriber count, closing in on 900 subscribers, hoping to get it to 1,000 as soon as possible. Make sure to follow us across social medias, Twitter, or X as it's called, Instagram, TikTok, at MMA Outsiders ETB. Do the same for the network at ETB Network. Make sure to, of course, if you can't watch the MMA Outsiders, you'll listen to the MMA Outsiders wherever you get your podcast. That's Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so much more. If you are listening on the audio side, of course, then make sure to go to our YouTube home, youtube.com/ETB Network. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that the MMA Outsiders and everything else here at the Empty the Bench Network is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. This Thursday will be Fight Study, time to be announced, so please follow us on social media so you get notified of what time we're going to do. As of this point, I have been running around and not been able to figure out a proper Fight Study time, so it will be announced on socials. Right now is still to be determined. We know it's going to be on Thursday, though. We will do UFC.
Yeah, at the very least, we're trying to keep the literal day of the week consistent. We're just figuring out at times. Well, again, as he just alluded to, be sure to follow us on all of our social medias to find out when that's going to be. As we're going to, dissect the main and co-main event, as we have 2 title fights from Salt Lake City, Utah this weekend, and it's always good to be able to break down some of these. We've been doing this since UFC 305, so it's been good.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, actually, we started with UFC 304. I think.
Oh, that's right. Because that's right. Because I wasn't on the very first one.
Right.
That's why.
The first one was me and Pat. But you know what? We do have 100th episode things that we're gonna do. But you mentioned UFC 307 this weekend. You mentioned how we preview the title fight. So let's keep doing that here. Main event for this weekend: Alex Pereira, Potan himself, and Hishama defending the light heavyweight championship once again against I don't know if I want to say the most unlikely of challengers, but it was definitely the most surprising of challengers when it was first announced. Khalil Roundtree Jr.
Yeah, I mean, Khalil Roundtree Jr. is the number 8 ranked light heavyweight in the world. He's on what now, a 5-fight win streak, and I think there's just a lot of. Let me just say this, as someone who's been around the MMA internet social media community for a while, I've never seen so much hate for one fighter going into a fight, given that none of this was his fault. It was literally what the UFC chose to do. Khalil Roundtree didn't do anything wrong. Whether it's if he deserves it, if he doesn't deserve it, he's getting his title shot opportunity. And before we can get into this fight, I just want to say any of the people that are even remotely trying to either threaten this guy or discredit even remotely getting opportunities. Even we're saying that it was wrong for him to accept it. You just need to leave the guy alone. That's a little bit. That's a little bit.
If you're ever offered a title opportunity, what are you gonna do? Say no?
Of course not. And I think what the disappointing part is that Khalil Roundtree has been in the UFC for quite some time. It's between now about eight years and a decade now. And I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve a title shot, but at some point you have to give credit where credit is due. And I think 5 wins in a row is quite impressive. And again, as I just alluded to, I think this was the hand that the UFC decided to deal with for other undisclosed reasons. I don't know what those are, but I think anybody even discounting that he even has a puncher's chance in this fight is crazy, considering the way Roundtree has fought the last couple of years. Is this the toughest fight of Alex Pereira's career? No, but is this a fight where maybe he goes in and he potentially looks past him and he doesn't look as good as he has earlier this year? There's definitely that possibility, but I think anybody who even thinks that Roundtree, this was the wrong opportunity or whatever. I mean, if you're in this situation, this is the biggest opportunity of his career. It's very similar to when TJ Dillashaw fought and won his title all those years ago. There's been rocky stories like this before. So, is it disappointing that Magomed Ankalaev, the April number 1 contender and the guy that's on a 12-fight winning streak is not getting a title shot? Yeah, you could probably say that, but to give Khalil Roundtree his flowers, I mean, he's done everything and then some that he needs to do to at least prove himself. And at his final post-fight interview, he said that all he wanted to do is fight Alex Pereira, and now here he is, just days away from fighting Alex Pereira, and it doesn't get more intense than that, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't get more intense than that. I mean, like you said, it's the biggest opportunity of his career, and I wouldn't blame him for trying to not passing down this opportunity. You mentioned he's on a 5-fight win streak. We look at those opponents. And it's Modestus Bukauskas, Carl Roberson, Dustin Jacoby, Chris Daukaus, and Anthony Smith. 4 of those being finishes. And then the Dustin Jacoby fight being a controversial split decision. Those are definitely not bad. And I mean, that's a respectable winning streak along with the amount of finishes. At the same time, I think Alex Pereira is quite the step up. And
yeah, I do too.
The one thing I will say, because you mentioned giving him his flowers, that people think that this could be a tough fight for Alex Pereira, Zain, is because of Khalil Roundtree's kickboxing skills. The fact that he trains at Tiger Muay Thai, and we have seen the devastating leg kicks that Roundtree delivers. And Roundtree has power himself. That being said, I mean, you look at Alex Pereira's power and the knockouts that he's brought. It's a completely different story.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I wasn't discounting that. I just think it's interesting how this fight is being portrayed. Like it is really
stylistically, it's great. Sorry to scare you.
No,
stylistically, it is great. Do not get me wrong. But one, like you said, the UFC just hates Ankalaev, so they'll pass on him for the opportunity. And 2, you know why they booked this fight?
Why do you think?
Because number 1, they were probably trying to get Max Ilya for this one, but had to move it to 308 after Islam Makhachev got hurt.
Right.
Number 2, they were probably not willing to trust Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena to headline this card, even though there's plenty of women's fights on this card.
Right. And just because the UFC really doesn't headline women's title fights unless it's Amanda Nunes, and now Nunes is retired. So they probably thought, oh, this is not going to sell very well. We need something that wows the Utah crowd. And if you remember, if you look back on the brief history of UFC events going to Salt Lake City, Utah, it's only been big main events at the top of the bill.
Yeah.
Hence why Alex Pereira is getting this opportunity to fight in Utah, which, to be honest with you, if I was a Utah resident, I would be ecstatic about this because there's no way after this fight, unless barring anything catastrophic, that Alex Pereira is ever fighting in the state of Utah ever again.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this is also, Zain, the third time this year that Alex Pereira has had to save a card. He had to save UFC 300. Well, I shouldn't say save UFC 300. It was a banger, but they needed a main event in a really bad way come February. He had to save UFC 303 after the Conor debacle, and now here he is having to save a card again.
So I'm just curious because this is another fascinating part of this whole thing. I don't know if you follow this website. It's called bestfightodds.com. They compile every fight and they compile every sports book and where the opening odds, kind of lay at. Alex Pereira opened as a minus 535 favorite. The comeback on Khalil Roundtree was let's just say around plus 450. Do you think the opening line for this fight was too skewed, or do you think it's absolutely right given the crazy circumstance?
I don't know if I would have gone as deep as minus 535. I'd probably say at least though minus like 490, 480.
That's what I kind of thought too.
Somewhere around that.
Because that almost implies to me that Vegas thinks that Khalil Roundtree doesn't even have a chance, which is literally nuts.
Which means if Khalil Roundtree ends up pulling up the upset of the year, then Vegas is going to have to pay out in a really bad way.
Unfortunately, yeah. So I guess my thought on this fight is I don't think it's going to end any other way than a finish. The big question for me is I think the only way Khalil Roundtree has a chance is if he weathers the early storm and forces Pereira to tire out himself, because I don't think Roundtree can tire out Pereira. I think Pereira would have to do it on his own doing and then lose in some sort of catastrophic way. What do you think?
100% agree with you. That's what I see. I see Pereira. He's not going to come out aggressive because that's not Pereira's style. He's gonna take his time and be tactical, but he's gonna land that one or two power shots. And I mean, Zain, I know we talk about little short notice style those bouts, but if he was able to drop and knock out Jiri Prochazka twice in the way that he did, and knock out Jamal Hill in the way that he did, who's not to expect that Khalil Roundtree, the same thing will happen. So my prediction, Zain, I don't want to be disrespectful for Roundtree, and this could be stylistically a great fight, even if it's a short fight. But yeah, I give Khalil Roundtree 6 minutes. Within the first 6 minutes, he's getting stopped.
So I had to go back and do some digging, and this made me really sad. I have yet to win a single UFC main event pick since Alex Pereira's last fight. That's how long it's been since I've actually won a pay-per-view main event pick. I think the streak ends this weekend. I'm picking Pereira to defend his UFC light heavyweight title, but I'm going to go a little bit longer than you. I'm going to say a late second round TKO with a very competitive first round to go along with it.
All right. So we're in the same ballpark. We're just on different bases, I guess.
Although I will be as someone who likes crazy upsets and crazy storylines and that sort of thing, I think I will be pretty excited if Roundtree somehow pulls off this upset because and it actually might be a blessing in disguise for the UFC because then they would have to sell the rematch and
Well, if you look at our private chat, I think producer Pat thinks that you just put the jinx on Alex Pereira. You're about to cause the biggest upset in UFC history.
Oh no. Just like Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey. Oh no.
You know what? Would that not be typical of the UFC in the second half of 2024, though? Anything that could go... The second half of 2024 for the UFC has been Murphy's Law. Anything that could go wrong has.
Right. So if we're gonna go along on this go wrong trend, it would be Roundtree beating Pereira. It would be Max Holloway knocking out Ilia Topuria, and it would be somehow Stipe Miocic knocking out John Jones.
Wait a minute. No, don't say that. My phone's gonna blow up, and Dana White's gonna be yelling at us at why we would think that Stipe would knock out John Jones.
Probably.
But yeah, that's just the direction everything seems to be going. You know, if Khalil Roundtree won, Zan, it would obviously the biggest upset of the year, right?
Yes, but I have a follow up to that. Where would it rank in the biggest upsets in UFC history? It would have to be, it would.
I don't know if I would say one, but it would definitely have to be top 3 or 5.
You would agree that it would be the biggest upset in UFC light heavyweight championship history, though, right?
Yes, I would go with that. I would say, though, top 3, top 5. I don't know how I would rank it at this point with a Rousey home. I don't know how I would rank with a Leon and Kamaru Usman too.
A Sarah GSP 1.
Right. I think the thing is also, it would depend upon the circumstances of the finish, because it would be a difference between, you know, Khalil Roundtree getting whooped for 4 rounds and then putting up the stop in the 5th like Pereira did to Izzy Adesanya.
That would be unbelievable.
More unbelievable than Roundtree getting a shot in the first round to drop Pereira out cold in round 1?
I think both would be just as anticlimactic.
Fair enough. Now here's the other question.
Okay.
UFC 310. A lot of questions around that card.
Okay.
The rumors of Belal Muhammad. You know, if Pereira gets another first round knockout, or if it's in the first 6 minutes, like I think, and he takes no damage.
Okay.
And Ankalaev wins later this month. Do you think the UFC, in a drastic move, books Pereira versus Ankalaev to headline T-Mobile Arena at the end of the year?
I think it would be Plan E. I think they have plans that you and I and thousands of other people are dying to know, but we don't know. And they're probably already calculating it out, like, okay, if this happens, we're going to do this, whatever. I think that is a last resort. There's just something in my head that tells me that they don't like him so much that they will do whatever they can to avoid that fight for as long as they can.
I will counter them.
Okay.
Because there is another fight that Pereira has expressed interest in. And that is, if he wins this fight, moving back down to middleweight to challenge Dricus du Plessis and get the middleweight title back. Do you think if they would book that fight over giving Sean Strickland a rematch, you know, if they want 310, if they're that desperate for 310 to sell?
I would say no. I think you need more time to build a fight of that magnitude. And you need to do it. See, where I would counter you there is that's a fight you do in South Africa if they can get Africa done.
That's fair. So you don't think Pereira fights anymore for the year after this?
I would certainly hope not.
I agree with you. And if Pereira gets another finish like I think he's going to, if my prediction holds true, actually, if our prediction holds true, if it's in the first 2 rounds, that has to clinch Pereira Fighter of the Year, right?
Oh, I think he already has it no matter what.
I don't know. I think if Roundtree upsets him, Pereira's probably going to be at risk of losing that.
Okay, so then who would you pick instead of him? Would you pick Max Holloway if he beats Ilia Topuria?
Maybe, but I have another name.
Okay.
Another one of my guys. Dricus upsetting Strickland, upsetting Adesanya.
Yeah, you would pick him, wouldn't you? Okay, yeah, that's fair. Okay.
So I think if Pereira wins, Pereira's Fighter of the Year. If Pereira loses in upset fashion, I think it's Dricus.
Okay, and then if Pereira somehow loses, if you were to play a scheduler, I think Roundtree versus Pereira 2 in March at T-Mobile Arena in Vegas sounds great.
Yes, absolutely. We do have another fight. We got a title fight we got to talk about, as we mentioned. It's the co-main event. Women's bantamweight title on the line. Raquel Pennington against Juliana Pena, the former champion who lost her title and then didn't get the rematch with Nunes. Nunes retires. And so this is, I guess, her rematch.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've watched the countdown segment for this fight yet, but I forgot how much bad blood there's been between these two for the last 10 years. It started out as them being roommates on The Ultimate Fighter, and it turned into them accusing each other of pulling certain things. For example, Juliana accused Raquel of being drunk, and Raquel would accuse Juliana of missing practices when they were supposed to be there, considering they were on the same team. And um Raquel has called out Juliana over the past several years that apparently this fight has been avoided for several years in a row, and now it's finally happening. So, given kind of the backstory that I just gave you, do you think that the old school tough 18 element to this makes the fight bigger than what it already was?
I think it does some help. At the same time, I don't know too many people who are excited for this fight.
No, I
And
don't. I don't disagree. But would you agree to a certain extent that this was the Ultimate Fighter finale we never got?
yes, I'll agree with you on that. I think this definitely wraps up that chapter. I think that this does bring a little unique element. Plus, it does give Pena an arguably, hey, I've been, searching for the rematch, searching for another title opportunity. Now she gets it. I think what makes this fight difficult, Zan, it's three reasons. One, obviously, unfortunately, a lot of people in the modern MMA Twitter sphere do not like women's MMA. Number two, Raquel Pennington's last fight when she won the title against Wendell Silva was terrible, outright terrible. And number three,
But to counter you, it wasn't fully on her though that it was so bad.
correct. But then here's number three,
Okay.
because this person's signing came as a result of that, Kayla Harrison. And the way that she ran through Holly Holm, I think had people pegging her as the one who should be facing Pennington on Saturday night.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with those people, but at the same time, too, you have to honor that Pena was the champion at one point in time, and this is the UFC's way of doing just that. Now, let's say she lost to Nunes, which she obviously did, but let's say she took another fight and lost that. Okay, so let's say in my hypothetical scenario, she would have been 0-2 in this fight. I would have been more upset over that scenario than the scenario that she's coming back into, if that makes sense.
Juliana Pena is basically pulling a Stipe Miocic. That's what she did.
That's exactly right.
So it's not unheard of. You are right. That said, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago, this is a big risk for the UFC to book Kayla against Ketlin Vieira on this same card. Because now if Ketlin wins, their plans are really screwed up. Again, that would be typical UFC with Murphy's Law at this point.
Yeah, but this is no disrespect to Ketlin Vieira, given the level of opposition that Ketlin Vieira has fought compared to Kayla Harrison, the UFC is arguably not even worried that Kayla Harrison will even struggle with her.
Fair enough. So would you say now, obviously, if it's a closely competitive fight, this could change, but would you say as of this point, no rematch? Whoever wins a Harrison Vieira faces the winner of this fight.
Oh yeah, this is an unofficial 4-woman tournament for the Bantamweight Championship.
Fair enough. Now, what would you say for this fight? Because obviously, like you said, Pennington's fight where she won the vacant title was not all her fault. It does take two to tango. Having said that, I think Pena, still with the win against Amanda Nunes, has the experience factor, and I think is just a better, more of an all-around product than Pennington at this point.
Yeah, if Pena shows up, she should be able to win this fight. The question is if it's the version of UFC 277, we're in for one of those boring modern-day WMA fights in a long time, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I don't want to disrespect Ketlin Vieira because you are right. If Ketlin wins, she'll obviously get a title shot because she has the capabilities. But behind the scenes at the UFC that they have to be rooting for Harrison to win, because if this fight turns out boring and Vieira pulls off the upset, the UFC is going to be just, this is going to be Dana. Ooh!
Yeah, well, I think the scenario that they're rooting for is Pena versus Harrison, because then that's something to sell. There's all those connecting the dots with Cyborg, Pacheco, Nunes being in the past history, being interlinked to both of them, it would be a huge storyline type fight if they were to happen.
For sure. So I'm going to give the UFC its credit here. I'm going to say that does end up happening. I think Harrison beats Vieira earlier tonight, gets another spectacular finish. And then I don't know if I can say Pena is going to finish Pennington. I think, unfortunately, as you said, Zan, we're in for a 25-minute ride. But I think Pena does enough. She wins the championship back.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to be a little bit more bolder than you and say that Pennington nearly finishes Pena. It's going to go very similar. I'm going to pull a rabbit out of the hat. This fight's going to go very similarly to Shane Carwin versus Brock Lesnar in the sense that Raquel Pennington is going to rock Pena early, use up every single ounce of energy, and then lose and then lose the next 4 rounds in the worst way you've ever seen.
All right. That's a bold one.
So I like Pena by decision 49-46, 4 rounds to 1 to bring the belt back home to Chicago, which means we would have 2 Chicago UFC champions instead of just 1. So there you go. I like the former champ to get her belt back and hopefully move one step closer to a return to the 3-1-2. But I can keep my hopes.
That said, Dana hates your mayor so much that he ain't doing it.
No. I know. Unfortunately.
All right. Let's talk about Paris. I mean, San, what we witnessed on Saturday is probably one of the worst beatings I have ever seen. Renato Moicano just laid into BSD. It was not even close.
Nope. That's the best I've ever seen Renato Moicano, and that's not even an understatement.
No, it's not.
He smoked him. He went in there. It was almost like watching the Bucks versus the Eagles. Tampa went into Philly in 2002 and said, "We don't care. You don't care that we're going into enemy territory. We're going to kick the Eagles' ass." And in this scenario in 2024, Renato Moicano did the same thing in Benoit Saint-Denis' backyard.
This was the first half of the Toon Squad versus the Monstars, where Renato Moicano was the first half Monstars and just put an absolute beating on Benoit Saint-Denis to the point. I mean, it did not look like Benoit Saint-Denis could open his eyes after the first round. And yet he somehow, to BSD's toughness and his credit,
he somehow won round 2. He won the second.
I think Moicano may have taken round 2 off, but somehow, BSD continued to fight. Unfortunately, the doctor stoppage had to happen. I know you had Michael Bisping making the remark of, "Oh, if the doctor is French, he won't stop this fight." I get the sentiment, but at the same time, we're talking about fighter safety here. And if a fighter's eyes are like this, where they're so puffed up that they're practically closed, you have to stop that fight.
His ear, oh my God. His ear was like fully red. You ever seen his ear like that?
He had a cut on this eyelid.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal.
He had to stop the fight.
No, for sure. For sure. That's one of the most, maybe this is my nerdiness coming out. That's one of the single worst UFC Fight Night main event one-sided fights I've ever seen in all my years of watching UFC Fight. It's only excluding pay-per-views. I can't remember a Fight Night card that bad. I might have to go all the way back to Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar, UFC on ABC 1 to remember a UFC Fight Night main event that was that one-sided.
But at the same time, at least Kattar made it to the final, though.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm just curious because I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about this. What did you think of Renato Moicano calling out the French government in his unbelievably comical post-fight interview?
This man just never fails to amaze me with the way that he talks. It feels like
he goes, I wanted to get on the mic and I wanted to talk some shit about France.
But France is so beautiful. He's basically said, I went to the Louvre, They better put a photo of his knockout in the Louvre next. He's basically talking about how beautiful of a city that Paris is, and then says the only exception is your government. It's like he went from full-on appreciation to full-on Colby Covington in a second.
He really did, which I know I'm thinking way ahead, but Tom, if the UFC did the obvious thing, which was headline him in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil next year for a fight night, it would be the biggest international UFC fight night of all time.
Probably, but that being said, we entered this fight expecting what the next fight and what the call out would be, and we got it. Because Moicano was asked, hey, Patty called you out after 304. Do you want it? And Moicano basically said, hell yes. Yeah. So I think the matchmaking makes itself.
You want easy fights.
I think the matchmaking makes itself. Moicano versus Pimblett next.
Although his other call at Dan Hooker, I would not consider Dan Hooker an easy fight at all. No. But to each their own, right?
No, but what are you gonna? No disrespect to Dan Hooker, because obviously Moicano, that would be a huge opportunity for not top contender, but like upper echelon contender status. But it's gonna be that versus the idea of, come on, imagine the press for Renato Moicano versus Paddy Pimblett. Imagine the press conference between these two.
Unbelievable. And it would be one of those rare cases where if that was a fight night main event, you would have to do a press conference for that.
Right. Or if they're a pay-per-view co-main event, you would have to have a lot of attention on them.
Right, 100%. And I just think for Benoit Saint-Denis, one of two things happened. Either he drained himself too much, or he underestimated how good Moicano actually was, and that's why he didn't fight well. What did you think?
I think so. And honestly, I kind of understand where Moicano was coming from, in that he's saying BSD's strength is also his weakness. He likes getting into these firefights, and unfortunately, this is twice now, Zan, where he's gotten into a firefight and he's lost, because he lost to Poirier earlier this year in another firefight.
Right, in a fight that arguably he was winning before he got knocked out. So
that's true too. So yeah, I mean, hats off to Moicano. Devastating beatdown, and I'm interested in seeing him versus Paddy next.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing him versus Paddy Pimblett next as well. And man, I could not imagine. I mean, I think if Moicano were to win that fight, I could not imagine how funny that post-fight interview could be. But could you imagine the post-fight interview Paddy Pimblett beat him? Oh my god!
Oh dear!
Oh no!
Oh man! Co-main event. I have to say, I'm a little disappointed in Brendan Allen.
I am too. This was the biggest fight of his career, and he blew it.
Won the first round, and I think he expensed all his energy in that first round, because Imavov was just on top of him for 2 rounds.
The third round, though, was decent, though.
It was decent, but it was still a clear Imavov round in my mind.
That's fair.
So at this point, I mean, what do you do next with Brendan Allen? Every time he tries to get a big opportunity to advance to that upper echelon, it's always a loss.
I think you should fight Israel Adesanya. That's what I think.
Oh man.
That's what I think. And I understand Israel Adesanya is light years above Nasruddin Imavov, but that's one of those fights where Izzy's coming off, a bunch of losses in a row now. He's 500 in his last 8. This is like the perfect, okay, if you can't beat Brendan Allen, maybe you should think about putting the R word inside your head. So,
but in my mind, don't get me wrong, okay, I don't know if I see Israel Adesanya versus Brendan Allen as like a pay-per-view co-main event, which I assume would be next for Izzy. That's more of a fight night main event. I don't know if Izzy would go back to fight nights.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt that. It was just more of like a shot in the dark idea, considering
it's not a bad shot in the dark idea, but it's just, I think that's a fight where you have to put it on a pay-per-view with 2 title fights, because that doesn't scream co-main event for me.
Right. I mean, what do you think you do if you're Brendan Allen there?
At this point, I mean, if you're the UFC, do you make Brendan Allen fight down again?
What if you make him fight Jared Cannonier?
I could see Cannonier coming off the loss, has the chip on his shoulder. I could see that.
Yeah, he how would you say it? He lost to the guy that beat the guy, basically.
Yeah, we're gonna play MMA math here.
Yeah. So that's another option, but Allen really did with this loss really downgrade himself to only staying in the co-main events because right now he did not prove anything to me that he's even remotely a main event worthy fighter at this point moving forward. He has a lot more work to do than I think people realize.
Yeah.
For Imavov, and I'm sure you would agree with me, it's just for him right now sitting and playing the waiting game and seeing what the heck happens with the top three of the division. Does he not?
Yeah, no, that's what it's gonna have to be at this point because, if you're not ready to do this, is to kind of go off on your point earlier, Zan, about Duplessis and Pereira. If you're not willing to do Duplessis versus Pereira next, then you can't deny Sean Strickland a rematch. You have to have that next.
Right.
So you have to wait to see how that fight goes, and then you have to wait and see what the UFC wants to do. Because if Pereira wins this fight here, and Duplessis, after already beating Adesanya, then goes and wins a rematch with Strickland, is the UFC going to use that to basically pull the trigger and do that super fight? Because I think there's a real possibility there, which means Imavov is out of luck again.
Yeah, but I think Imavov knows that there are bigger fights that don't involve him where he's probably okay with waiting. I'd assume, considering how active he's been over the last year and a half.
That's fair. So
that's the only thing I would say where maybe he's okay with sitting out given all of those scenarios. Or if you want, I know that this might be too far-fetched, but maybe you put him as the backup for the next UFC middleweight title fight, depending on who it is. And
I think that's fair.
Depending on who's still available, you could do that.
It's fair. More than fair, actually. All right, couple of news items. So, according to Khabib Nurmagomedov, Islam Makhachev will defend his lightweight title UFC 311. According to Khabib, Islam has accepted an offer for January, which would mean UFC 311. We believe at this point, as you mentioned, actually, it's going to be in California for January of 2025. Very interesting. If that's true, then to me, that means what we talked about last week or so, where Islam versus Sarukian happens, UFC 312 happens in Saudi Arabia, February 1st, according to the Riyadh season calendar. That would basically mean the UFC Saudi Arabia 2 would be another fight night. It wouldn't be the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a bummer if you're a fan that only that resides in the Middle East, that the next Islam fight arguably won't be in the Middle East. But I think at the beginning of the year, kicking it off with arguably your most talent-rich and entertaining division in the whole sport, that's a pretty good start to 2025 in my opinion. Makhachev versus Tarzukian, that's a huge fight.
Mm-hmm. The only question then becomes, what do you do with 312? So does that mean then, if our matchmaking, armchair matchmaking that we talked about a week or so ago, Zan, plays out, does that mean then Duplessis Strickland 2 happens 312, either the weekend before or the weekend of the Super Bowl?
Yeah, that, or potentially if they can get that new arena in South Africa booked for March, that's where that fight would go.
And to a 313, that's fair. But then, if that happens, what do you do for 312?
You could do a welterweight title fight based on if Belal or Shavkat. That's the next fight, assuming they're healthy.
Oh, you think Belal or Shavkat makes a quick turnaround and defends at 312?
Potentially.
Okay, what would be Plan B then?
So Plan B, what you would do is you would figure out what the heck is going on with the heavyweight division.
maybe have Aspinall make another interim title defense.
Or maybe Aspinall is then promoted to undisputed champion, depending on what
Oh,
happens.
depending on if Jones retires, yeah.
Right.
If Jones and or Stipe retire after 309, promoting the heavyweight champion, yeah, you could do another heavyweight title fight with Aspinall in the picture instead.
So you could do that. And then the final scenario for what you could do is you could probably end up doing Merab versus whoever, whether it's Sean O'Malley or whether it's somebody else.
I was gonna say maybe somebody else. It might be actually maybe 312 in Saudi Arabia isn't off the table. Maybe Merab versus Umar is gonna be 312.
That would make logical sense.
Because O'Malley just announced he's having surgery. He's not going to be able to fight for a while.
Oh, right. And he even admitted that he was going to be out for like a year anyway.
Yeah. So then maybe 312 on February 1st isn't out of the picture yet. Maybe they'll work on Merab Umar.
That would make logical sense to me. And then based on that, you'd have the whole Q1 planned out. And then by the time International Fight Week rolls around, all of these fights would have played out. Then you could figure out what you could do with all the other divisions that maybe haven't been accounted for yet. So I think it's all going to depend on what happens in Q1. That's going to determine how big potentially the second half of the year is going to be.
For sure. I like that idea. You brought it up and it reminded me about that. And like, you know what? Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Joe Rogan, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, that's that had to be early on in Khabib's career, no?
No, that was Umar. That was UFC 272, I think.
Oh no way. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, no. He says, hold on. He just gave up in the middle of the last name. Umar Nurmagomedov.
Just like how he imitated Frank Shamrock, where he goes, "Here we go, for San Diego."
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
You forgot about that one?
I haven't thought about Strike Force San Diego or Frank Shamrock in quite some time.
Right.
Actually, no, I have thought about Frank Shamrock in quite some time because I did a UFC Champions quiz like a week or two ago.
Oh, of course you did. How many did you get?
I got them all.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
Including the super fight champions and the interim champions.
Congratulations! That means you were a true UFC historian. If you could get all of the champions,
maybe we need to do that quiz on the air at some point with us together.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, that would be fun. That's for sure. I guess this is a perfect segue into the celebration, is it not?
No, because there's a certain Irishman who opened his mouth over the weekend.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
About your boy Belal Muhammad.
Yeah, which honestly, I mean, this version of Conor, I'm sorry, I don't think this version of Conor is beating anybody at this point.
No. Having said that, you know what? I know Eric Anders is not involved in this, because usually I save this sound effect for him, but I did say that Belal Muhammad is your boy, so he is your boy.
Yeah, all I can really say is Conor McGregor is literally doing whatever he wants and living his best life. If he's being asked questions about the welterweight division and fighters he'll never even fight.
Can I just say one thing to Conor McGregor? It's another sound effect, but can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Okay, and pardon my French.
You need to shut the fuck up.
If it does not involve Conor McGregor actually being in a cage, I don't care. I don't even care about Conor McGregor actually being in a cage at this point either.
Right. But yeah, now he spends half of his time getting drunk on kick streams with creators that he's never even heard of.
And gambling.
Did you see the rumor that's going around about him now, that apparently there's supposed to be this big announcement between him and Riyadh season or something like that?
What does Riyadh season want with him? What's he gonna do?
I don't know. Apparently,
are they gonna bring a BKFC event to Saudi Arabia now?
I don't know. It's potentially that there's also this rumor, which is yet to be verified, that potentially Terrence Crawford could be involved now too. But there's no like a formal.
You're not suggesting Conor McGregor versus Terrence Crawford, are you?
No, I'm not, or at least I hope I'm not. I just know that I've seen that floating around the interwebs too.
If Conor McGregor versus Terrence Crawford happens, we
might have to retire.
That's what I think. And as far as what I think about Conor,
oh brother, this guy stinks.
I will literally only talk about him in sound effects at this point.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's so sad. We'll never get to relive 2016 all over again. And I need to stop living in the past because it's almost 10 years and
that's what Conor McGregor does. He lives in the past.
That's true.
He lives in fantasy.
Unfortunately.
All right. Now we'll do our 100th episode celebration.
Well, first off, Tom, we made it. Are you are you surprised or are you not surprised if you know what I was going?
I'm not surprised. Hey, Nick Diaz is fighting again. Obviously, that was Nate, but Nick Diaz is fighting again. Now he and Luque got rebooked, by the way.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Hopefully, UFC 310 delivers because that's a freak show fight if I've ever seen one.
Definitely. I just sit and think. I was getting to a point at this network where I said, I want to do something else. Because I was tired of doing just the constant sports shows. I wanted to talk MMA. And no disrespect to Nick Morgeson, but I wanted to talk of MMA with somebody that really knew the sport inside and out. So I reached out to a few people and said, look, I want to do a show. And one person of the original bunch that I asked actually responded yes. And he's sitting to my right here.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, first off, just from my recollection of it, it was totally out of the blue. I had read your work for the last couple of years. I had interacted with you periodically, but we hadn't fully conversed. Hence you even I'll never hold it against you to this day. Hence you butchering my name the first time we officially met. It's totally okay.
And Grant does it how many times on Football Forecast?
Unfortunately, it's too hard to correct him when we're actually taping, but I totally understand where you're coming from there. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely an out of the blue thing. I was about to start graduate school at the time, and I needed to do other things outside of drowning in reports and papers and man on the street interviews and other stuff I was doing. So I said sure that I would be interested. I didn't know we get to this point, but I was honored when you asked me, because I'm sure you would ask other people to do it, which you obviously just alluded to there. And I mean, was that your? I mean, just tell me more. Like, was that your initial vision for this whole thing? Was that you just wanted to do a show with somebody else that really knew the sport?
Yeah, and basically, I didn't know where it was going to go. I just wanted to actually talk about MMA because, again, no disrespect to Nick Morgan, no disrespect to my other show, ETB Sports. Sports brought me into the field, but my passion for everything goes to combat sports. Starting in as a professional wrestling fan when I was a youth, the end of the Attitude Era for WWE, the start of the Ruthless Aggression Era, and then it was 2005. We've talked about it on here and on Tough Zan. Started 2005. Little commercial starts to air on Spike TV for a show called The Ultimate Fighter, and maybe I'll TiVo it and watch it weekly after coming home after school, watching the tape program, and
right,
yeah. I kind of got hooked from there. And then Forrest Griffin versus Stephan Bonnar happened at the finale. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to stick around.
Yeah, so luckily for your co-host over here, I came in just after the tough boom a year later in 2006, starting with UFC 61, and people are always blown away when I tell them how old I am, considering I'm very young for how long I've watched the sport. We're now going on 18 years of consuming it, but we have very similar minds in that regard, and I think that's why we were able to mesh as well as we have. I is what ultimately led you to deciding that I was the person to do this with you, because I'm sure this wasn't an easy decision at the time.
One, your knowledge. Two, the fact that we both worked at Fan-Sided MMA for some time. And three, you just seemed like a cool dude. And you had a really awesome following. So I said, honestly, of those, I'm like, he's perfect and we need to bring him on.
Oh, thank you, buddy. We've sat here in this exact spot almost doing a lot of these, and I couldn't envision one half of the show without the other. So that's very kind of you. What you saying? Just to know that we had very similar knowledge bases, to where if I reference something, you wouldn't be confused. If you reference something, I wouldn't be confused. That's, I think, what it is meshed very well, and I'm glad.
I mean, look at what you mentioned, the Joe Rogan, the Strike Force, San Diego.
Yeah, I mean, and I bet you there are tons of people that have no idea what we just said, and there's a ton of internet message board crop of people that knew exactly what we said. So you never know.
Yep. There are just not enough people these days anymore that know the days of, Strike Force with Mauro Ranallo and Frank Shamrock.
That's right.
And to those people, I say, go grab the EA Sports MMA video game. I know Dana White hates that game, but go get it.
Well, yeah, the EA Sports MMA video game is definitely one, or go deep into the UFC Fight Pass archives, I guess.
Oh yeah, you could watch them on UFC Fight Pass. You could also watch old Prides to hear Mauro Ranallo when he was commentating with Boss Rudin.
That's true.
So yeah, I mean, 100th episode. Really can't believe it. Now, just a couple of, I guess, questions. Little Q&As. We have evergreen stuff as we have 10 minutes left. Zain, what is your favorite venue? What do you think is the best venue to hold fights in, and what is the worst? I think for the best, you and I kind of have hometown biases.
I'm actually gonna go different than you, and no, this is not a hometown bias. After seeing the T-Mobile Arena once and only once, that's the best fight venue I've ever been to physically. It just feels like big fight always means Las Vegas.
I think I agree with you because T-Mobile is the UFC's unofficial home. I think if you say T-Mobile, though, you also have to mention the MGM Grand Garden Arena just because of the history there with the UFC and with boxing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was just saying more so just because I physically seen it, and to say that I felt the energy in there, that's the best venue to host a fight.
Which is fair enough. And you know what? I'll go 3 Vegas locations because the Palms is just for an intimate setting, especially for those early UFC cards. I think, at least in the Spike era, I think the Palms actually had a nice location to it.
Yeah, that's definitely one that's up there for sure. And I think you have to give love to the Mandalay Bay, considering they hosted a lot of the early UFCs in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, you have to mention all the Vegas arenas. But Zain, you know what I'm going to say. As a native New Yorker, I mean, come on. You want to talk about combat sports history. There's no place like Madison Square Garden. It's the Mecca. It's the Mecca of sports and entertainment.
Yeah, that would be my number 2.
The aura. There is as the kids say, an aura about Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think, ever since 2016, they've only had major fights held there. Maybe minus Daniel Cormier versus Derek Lewis, but outside of that, every other MSG fight has been relatively huge. Mm-hmm. So, and I had to discount Daniel Cormier versus Derek Lewis, but let's be honest, at that particular point in time, nobody wanted to see that fight. So,
Derek Lewis, that they took advantage of the "My Balls Was Hot" promo from a month earlier.
That's true.
I actually will go one more. I'm going to go international because we mentioned Pride's in. You have to say the Saitama Super Arena.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Saitama Super Arena for sure is the best international arena of all time. I would argue the O2 Arena in London has a mystique about it as well.
Definitely. I know this one's more wrestling based and actually no, I can't really say that. I mean, I think more people know it for wrestling than MMA, but I think you got to give some love to Tokyo Dome.
Yeah, I would agree there. It's just it was used so long ago that I don't think a lot of people would remember.
More people know. The more people would know Saitama because of Pride.
Right.
Fair enough. And the THQ UFC Undisputed 3 video game.
Oh, I too, considering it was the last UFC video game to have Pride mode. So
it was the only game to have Pride mode. It's my favorite UFC game of all time.
That's right. I'm gonna go a little bit more controversially for the worst one. I'm gonna say the worst arena to host a fight is this is gonna sound weird, but Lanxess Arena in Cologne, Germany, for me had no energy to it whatsoever. The one and only time the UFC went there.
I don't even remember that.
That was UFC 99, the comeback. The main event was Rich Franklin and Wanderlei Silva, June of 2009.
Oh my gosh. That's a throwback.
It's just, to me, I watched that card, and to me, there just seemed to be no energy in that building at all.
Well, Zan, if you want to talk about no energy, I mean, there's only one location at this point that people would call the worst arena in MMA, and you know what it is.
Yeah, I do, unfortunately.
Apex, Apex, Apex.
Well, I can't say it's the worst yet, because if I go there and actually like it, then I'm gonna have to eat my words. So
you're right, and I should clarify something. You know why? Because MMA On Point put out a whole thing just recently. I don't know if you saw the video, 10 risks that basically paid off for MMA promoters.
I did.
To give credit, it is fascinating for the UFC to have an arena ready to go for whatever, where they can host Dana White Contender Series, where they can host Ultimate Fighter, they can host any sort of event that they want, and have a full production TV, studio ready to go. It's great, and financially, it's a big benefit. It just stinks that they have such small, if any, crowds there.
Yeah. Oh well, I guess that leads to a perfect segue. I'm happy to announce right here, right now, that I will be going to UFC Vegas 98 at the Apex, which leads to my very next point. I am very interested to see what it is going to sound like of me being one of 50 people in the entire place. It's going to be really.
I'm curious to get your exclusive thoughts. I'm curious to get your exclusive thoughts on that.
It's going to be very, very bizarre. And just come to think of it, before COVID happened, I bet you most of these fight nights would have either been international or on the road somewhere in places that they've never been to. So
for sure.
It just goes to show how much history kind of plays a whole part in that.
Absolutely. And then quickly, just to finish off, I know we still have 3 more months left in 2024. What are you already looking for 2025, though?
I'm excited to see if Alex Pereira moves up to heavyweight to try to capture a third UFC championship. That's gonna be a fascinating story. Number one, I'm gonna give you 3 wish list options.
Okay.
I'm gonna say, number 2, pending the outcome of the fight, I'm curious to see what Francis Ngannou's PFL journey is going to look like if he can beat Renan Ferreira. That's going to be super fascinating. And then I would say number 3, and one that I think is going to be very interesting, is is how the current status of the heavyweight division is going to be remembered pending the outcome of the UFC 309 main event.
So I'll give 3 as well. Number 1 is exactly your third. I want to see what the heavyweight division is going to look like in 2025. Is Jones actually going to lay down the gloves at Madison Square Garden? Are we going to get Jones versus Aspinall in 2025? After all, I'm curious to see how the dominoes in that division play out. Number 2, I'll go with it. You know what? Because I do suffer them, I'll go with the PFL one as well. I want to see what the PFL is going to look like in 2025, not just because of what's going on in less than 3 weeks time, but also bear in mind, They talk about PFL Africa starting up in 2025. And I don't know if they're going to planning to start another regional, minor league feeder system in 2025 as well. In another, I don't know if it's Asia or Australia, but I'm curious to see, Zan, they've talked about building the Champions League of MMA. I want to see what that next step is in 2025, especially coming off the heels of however October 19th is going to go.
Interesting. And then what would be your third?
And you kind of said it earlier today too, Zan. If maybe they throw Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland there, or maybe they want to see if du Plessis wins one more fight. I want to see it with du Plessis as the champion. I want to see him headlining a card in South Africa.
Yeah, the South Africa card would be fascinating, especially since they're building out this new arena apparently that's supposed to hold as many people, if not a few people less than the big house at the University of Michigan, which would be an unbelievable scene to have nearly 100,000 people at a UFC fight. So, and that if that fight goes to South Africa, that those tickets are going to sell out in literal seconds. It's going to be unbelievable. You thought that UFC Noche at the Sphere was going to be big. That's going to be at a whole.
I'll actually throw a fourth. They're not going to do the Sphere again, but apparently Noche UFC 3 is going to be in Mexico. I want to see what the hell that's going to look like.
Yeah, if that's in a soccer stadium or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
And that's going to do it for episode 100 of the MMA Outsiders. So make sure you hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here. YouTube.com/ETV Network is our home. Help us get to the climb to 1,000 subscribers. Make sure to follow us across social media at MMA Outsiders ETB and at ETV Network. If you can't watch us, make sure you listen wherever you get your podcasts. If you are listening on those audio-only platforms, make sure you go to the YouTube home. And, of course, shout out to our friends over at Playback. We will have this Thursday our next edition of UFC Fight Study as we get ready for UFC 307 on Saturday. So, Zan, anything you want to close out with?
Yeah, I mean, Fight Study is going to be a blast. Can't believe we hit 100, but it's been a wild ride. We've done a bunch of things, whether it's Tough Enough, whether it was the exclusive interviews that we used to do back in the day, whether it's us disagreeing and rambling about UFC main event picks, which you and I are struggling in that department this year, but hopefully the close to the year will be better for both of us. And this is definitely as for not just myself, but my overall consumption as I'm able to dissect everything by doing these with you. So it's been 100 episodes. It's been an absolute pleasure. And again, thank you for the kind words earlier in the show. I couldn't do it without you.
Of course. All right. For Zan, I'm Tom. We'll see you next time on the MMA Outsiders.
Take care. And be Joe Piper.